Alright, so we're going to get started. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Haley, and I am the Public Art Painting and Drawing Professor at ESU. Just a couple quick announcements before we begin. So there's a sign-in sheet over here. If you're here for our forum, don't forget to sign in, so that way I can mark you present. There's also the EFF passports, if you're going to do that for the class today. So make sure you grab one of those. If you forget, don't worry. You can go grab one at Chalks or pretty much any other stop along our forum, art walk. And just a reminder for those students, you're required to attend the full lecture to receive a point for art forum, so please stay for the end. And please remember to have your email notifications turned on in Canvas, because, and please read your email, because that is where all communication for the class, related items, special announcements, opportunities are. And if you keep an eye on it, I have a bunch of new opportunities coming out for y'all that will be posted. For the audience, please think of questions that you have for our speakers. After we finish, we can do questions. All right, and then some special announcements. We have a special event happening on the 29th. It'll be our critique night. So please keep an eye on your email for notifications and details on how to participate. And that's February 29th. Also, we are currently seeking a student representative for the Art Forum Committee. So they will be the voice of the students and be able to bring up any student concerns that committee will seriously consider. So remember, sophomores or juniors, please apply. The apps are due February 23rd. By the end of February, the committee will review applications and announce your representative for the first week of March. And please see Canvas for further details and to submit your application. And last but not least, do any ESU art students have any art program related announcements?
Your Hive workshop proposals are due on the 15th.
Yep, and I'll also announce about the Canvas on Monday to remind you. And so I'd like to also introduce John Decker, our Associate Professor of Graphic Design and Chair of our Scholarship Committee, to make announcements about art program scholarships.
Okay, good afternoon. I'll try this. The Scholarship Committee wanted to let you know that if you're a continuing student, and you're going to continue next fall and next spring, that the scholarship application portal is open. The deadline is March 8th, so you've got a little bit of time to apply, but make sure that you get on and complete that. Keep in mind that you need to read the instructions very carefully. All artwork in your portfolios must have been created in a class here at ESU from last March through this March. Okay? You will be submitting a portfolio. You are required to fill out the ESU General Scholarship application, and there are some scholarships that consider financial need, and to be eligible for those, you have to fill out a FAFSA application. If you need assistance documenting your work or putting your portfolio together, we ask that you work with your faculty members. And I guess last, if you have any questions about the scholarship portal or applying, please talk to myself, Professor Holt, or Professor Iceland, who are also on the scholarship committee.
And all of their emails are also in Canvas. If you need to contact them, I have a special page dedicated for that for your convenience. All right, so, oh my bad.
Dr. Eisen, do you want to talk about the exhibition, or Claire or someone for the Art History Association?
Hi, so the Art History Association is holding an exhibition that should open the first Friday of March. Our call for entry
after that, remember?
The 6th of March.
The 6th of March, so we change that. Our call for entry is now open, and it is about an academy. So subversing what the Art Academy has deemed fine art in the past and what we are calling fine art now. So we're looking for anybody interested in applying work for that. and we will have posters up very soon about it and posts on Instagram.
Cool. Thanks, Claire. There will also be reminders in Canvas that will be going out periodically in case you are forgetful, like myself. All right, so today we are having a little different format for our presentation. Our speaker today is Dr. Charity-Mika Woodard, who is an associate professor of art education at Emporia State University. Oh, and Dr. Woodard will be conversing with our gallery and outreach director of the ESU Art Program, Stephanie Alaniz. So please give a warm welcome for our speakers today.
Sorry, I'm first. Today, it is a huge pleasure to be in conversation with my friend and colleague, Dr. Woodard. She's originally from Western Kansas and has a BFA in Painting and Scenic Design from Pittsburgh State University. She went on to the New York Academy of Art to get an MFA in Painting and Drawing. She's taught for 7 years in K through 12 and has taught college since 2008. That's 16 years. She got her doctorate from George Fox University in Portland, Oregon, and her research is on activist art or protest art. Dr. Woodard has been at ESU for 4 years, and she is a practicing artist. So please give it up for Dr. Woodard.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to do something a little different. So I noticed that most of the art forms showed a lot of pictures and they were in the dark. So obviously we're in the light and we're sitting down and there's no pictures. So we can link to some things. We can link to my website. We'll put them in the show notes later if you would like. But I wanted to actually have an organic conversation. So we are up here and we're a little raw. Like I just have a couple bullet point notes. Like that's all we got, folks. So we're gonna have this organic conversation and we want you to be involved in the conversation as well. So we're gonna leave some time for some give and take and some questions like an art forum. That's what we got going here. So please be thinking of some questions because we're going to leave some time to answer them.
Okay, so my first question is, can you tell me about your journey as an artist and an educator?
Sure, so I am from Western Kansas, grew up in this area, and I wanted to get out of Kansas as soon as possible. I went to Pittsburgh State University, and then I'm a first generation college student. So I wanted to get my master's, but I had no way to even know how to do that. So I really sympathize with first generation college students. My parents could not help me at all with that process. They were like, hey, great, you want to get your master's degree. Good luck. We can't help you with that either. So I went to Barnes & Noble. The internet was brand new. I am old. So I went to Barnes & Noble and I bought a coffee and they had a whole rack of magazines and I grabbed some and I looked up a U.S. News and World Report, and at that time they had like the top 10 list of the best colleges in each of the categories, and they actually still do that. The top 10 colleges for a master's in fine art, and I applied to all 10 of them. And I got into 2 of them. So I got into the New York Academy of Art and I got into Savannah College of Art and Design. And I did not research either of those. I just kind of willy-nilly decided I would rather go to New York than Georgia. So I had never been to New York before. I watched some movies on New York. By who did we talk about before?
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen. I watched Woody Allen movies. And before I was like, who's that pervert who married his daughter? Who is that? I couldn't remember. So, Woody Allen. That was my frame of reference. So I watched some Woody Allen movies, and I packed my little bag, and I flew to New York, and I had never been there before. And I spent 2 years in New York, and it was an eye-opening, life-changing experience. It was fantastic. I met so many artists. I met so many people. My whole world was changed, and I highly recommend it. I thought that it was fantastic. I knew that I would not live in New York forever, so I really embraced that whole experience. And then after New York, I moved to Kansas City with my sister, and am I answering all the questions?
Yes.
Can't remember. So I put out into the universe, and the universe is funny this way. I put out into the universe because I never dreamed that I would do art education. In fact, I said out loud, I will never do crafty crap with kids all day. And then after grad school, I was going to be a huge art star, by the way, and the universe is funny because the only job I could get after my master's was at an elementary school. And I found myself in an elementary classroom covered in glitter, just like loving every minute of it. And sometimes you just never know, like the trips and turns that your life will take to find your calling. And, you know, the things that will touch your heart like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I was also wondering if you could expand on your time as a student in New York. Because when I was in grad school, I was in West Virginia in a very small college town, and I cannot imagine being a student in New York City. So if you could talk about just the comparison of when you were not a student in New York and when you were, that would be really great.
Yeah, being a student in New York was just truly fascinating. We would go to the Met all of the time. I still, like, every time I go back to New York, I have certain paintings that I have to see at the Met. They're like my friends. I go straight up the stairs and to the left to the European paintings, and there's, you know, several of my favorites. They're like my old friends that I see.
Mm-hmm.
I really count myself lucky because some of my friends in grad school, they've had to take many other jobs and do other things, and I have been, you know, fortunate that I have been gainfully employed in the arts, and I have seen them struggle in so many other things. And I have sort of found my niche as being gainfully employed and being able to talk about art, which is what I really love, every single day, and been able to make money at it. Some other things, the artists that I have met and some techniques that I've learned, I'm definitely not the most talented person to come out of my graduating class. There's a lot of people, excuse me, that I went to grad school with that have just this amazing technique. They can just paint circles around me, and they spend their days doing what I call slickety-dickety paintings for women on the Upper East Side. But I always wonder, like, what are those paintings about? They're sort of lacking a little bit of soul, but they have beautiful technique. And, you know, all art sort of wraps itself around, like, the technique versus the concept. And you have to, like, marry the two of those things together. And sometimes artists just really get it right, where it's like, what are you talking about and how are you doing it?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. As a maker and a viewer of art, my priority usually is based on concept and what the work is about and what the artist was thinking or the experience they want to evoke from me. because I think sometimes when things are just like, they look nice, I kind of spend a lot less time with them because that's all there is. Yeah. So I like that you talked about that too.
Yeah.
Would you tell us about the transition from teaching in high school to teaching college students?
Oh, sure. So I spent 7 years teaching kindergarten through high school. So I was in elementary for only 1 year. That was enough. And then 3 years in middle school. I really loved middle school students. Like, they get my sarcasm. I'm like a sassy big sister. And then 3 years in high school, and I absolutely love high school students as well. Like, I was the prom sponsor. I love their whole homecoming situation. I like the drama of high school, the cheerleader, like, you know, just the football games. I would go to all of their events and activities. It's got a lot of energy and fun, just being in the high school setting. And then my high school literally shut down. It was taken over by the Kansas City public school. And I remember, I had this dream of one day teaching at a college. So I got on the Chronicle of Higher Ed, which is where professors look for jobs. And I saw that they were hiring an art professor not too far from Kansas City, where I was living. At this small Presbyterian school, and I was like, remember that dream you had? Well, let's apply, and I got that job. And so then I was off to teach at college, and when I went there, I realized some of the college professors were sort of like those classic college professors that you see in the movies, where they're very, very serious. They're having like long conversations and yelling debates about Beowulf, and they're wearing tweed jackets with elbow patches, and they still smoke pipes. Like, who does that? And they come to meetings with their charts and their graphs. And I show up like Elle Woods with like scented markers, and I felt very self-conscious when I first got there. And I was like, well, should I change? Should I try to conform and be different because I am now a college professor? But one of my friends was helping me through that really and saying like, hey, if everybody, thinks the same and acts the same, well, then there's no reason for all of us to be here. Like, you need to hold on to what makes you you. And so, I really find that to be true, like in our artwork and in our soul and in our calling. Like, we need to do that. So.
Yeah, I think it's essential to have people who are outside of the norm, because those people are who challenges the norms and help us progress and grow, right?
Yes.
So I think that's essential. Did you notice, you mentioned the leadership in the college system, did you notice anything like strange within the leadership in secondary education?
Yes, even when I was in the high school system, now, I just want to preface it by saying this was my frames of reference. Nobody else's, just mine. But growing up in the Midwest, it just always seemed that the athletic director was just really good with the football boys, so then next thing you know, they became the principal, and then they became the superintendent, and then, next thing you know, the football team got new uniforms and the art and band got cut. Again, just my experience, not saying overall, just my experience of where the funding was going. So I just realized that the artists, like, we needed to have a seat at the table. Like, we need to be a part of those conversations. And we need to really step up and have more leadership roles. And we need to be willing to, be a part of those conversations. And we weren't. We were taking a back seat, and we were willing to kind of stay in our lane and say like, oh, it's fine. And then, secretly complain that our programs were constantly getting cut. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that being really frustrating too, because it's almost as if they're not taking art seriously in these spaces, and that's really frustrating, and we see that even in college today too, and life, I guess, even more generally. You speak a lot about your career and your calling. How would you define those terms?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to talk about career and calling, because your calling is something that's very essential to who you are. That is, that's the essence of who you are. That's the reason that you get up in the morning. That's like when you wake up, that is what you're really passionate about, why you get up, the first thing that you think about. If you think about like the wheel on a car, that is the thing at the very center. And then the spokes coming out of it, out of that wheel, those could be like different jobs that you have, different tasks that you might have through the day, different careers. And you want to kind of remember back to that true essence of who you are, your passion, no matter what your tasks are, what your career is, what your current responsibilities are, because all of those things could change, and they might change over the span of your, entire career.
Is there a medium that you feel like you're like the most connected to as part of like your artistic practice?
Question. It could actually be changing, because I always really identified as an oil painter. That's my master's is in oil painting. My last show was called Wet, and it was large scale oil paintings. But I've really been kind of working myself into more fiber arts and weavings, and maybe integrating a little bit of the two of them together. I grew up with a seamstress as a mother, and I really enjoy the fact that as a painter, we paint on canvas, like we paint on fabric, and I love the flexibility of painting on a fabric that is movable. So I have cut some of my paintings off of the stretcher bars and just hung them on like rivets with some decorative nails, so that way they move. And I was inspired to do that by seeing a piece of art at an airport of all places, when I was running late for a plane. There's this beautiful piece, I'm going to take the time to tell you, there's this beautiful piece at the Denver airport, and what it is probably, 500,000, give or take, origami swans that somebody has folded by hand. And each one of these paper swans is on a piece of wire that then is attached to the wall. And they're just all along this wall, and they just look really beautiful until you walk by them, and then they just move like that as you walk. Or if you're late for your plane and you run, then they're like that. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I just wanted to like go back and forth, like just spend my whole day at this kinetic piece of art and just watch it move. And I was like, oh, how can this like movable thing work into my painting of some sort? And so that's how like the cutting of the painting and something moving is kind of like transitioning.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have a preference when you paint for canvas versus panel surface? I know some painters have like particular surfaces they prefer.
Yeah, so now it is the fabric because of the movability, but before that it was wood. because I have a tendency to get really aggressive. I saw some kiddos in the elevator with some panels, because I know that in painting, they're painting on some panels. So I used to paint on some wood panels, generally the cheapest possible ones, like some masonite panels. Because I would paint kind of aggressively, and I have been known to like poke holes in my canvas, just stab it right through there. Oops. Derek will tell you that, like if you squish through there, like you could spray some water on the back of it and kind of like make it tight again, but if you poke right through it, you're kind of a goner. So, I don't know, we'll talk later, see if that can be repaired, probably not. But, so I kind of get aggressive, and I have a tendency to do the entire painting in one setting. It's kind of one and done. I get into the moment, I get into the rhythm, and I will do, even if it's a large painting, I will do it all in one setting, and then I will not return to it. However long it takes to do the painting, I will complete it in one moment, because when I go back the next day, I'm not the same Charity, I'm not in the same mindset, and I find that I would just perseverate on it and ding dong forever. I think it's Bernard that I heard that they had to like take his paintings away from, like steal his paintings from him in the studio and hang them up in the gallery, and then like he would mix up a color in his studio and then like be like, this is the perfect color, and then he'd go to the museum, and when the guards were not looking, he'd like go and paint on his own artwork. Like, leave it, it's done. Like, do not paint on that anymore. Like me, it's dead to me.
Wow.
I'm not going back. I don't look back.
Just leave them in your wake, right? Oh, that's so interesting. I do not work that way at all, and I really admire that. Yeah, I cannot let something go. I have to fiddle with it forever until it feels correct. I really admire people who can and I love the idea of a moment, like that you're creating this situation where you're in this headspace and you're painting this image and you're giving it attention, and that's all the attention it gets. There's this really great book about historical artists and their daily routines when they create artwork that I read a long time ago, and I was just curious, do you have a routine when you're to get into these headspaces?
I do. So I listen to the women's stand-up comedy. I always listen to something, and at first my sister had recommended a few things, and I remember she was like, oh, you're gonna love, and I think she said Jane the Virgin, you're gonna love this show. And part of it was in Spanish, and they had subtitles, and I was constantly I had to go back to the computer and keep backing it up because I was I can't follow along. So then I just I had to abandon it. I don't know anything about that show because
Came back to it.
I didn't, because I had to move to something else, and yeah, so I went to comedy. So then I didn't have to watch it, you could just listen to it. And so generally put on a lovely stand-up comedy and do a painting.
That's super interesting. I'm a big podcast person, so sometimes when I hear a really good podcast that I listen to, I'll share it with people in my life that I love, and we'll re-listen to it together. And there are moments I remember what I was doing when the thing was said that was impactful. Do you feel that way about comedy? Is there something about comedy that helps you paint other than not being not needing to watch them? You can take a moment.
about that, but I do, like, when I re-listen to like Ali Wong, like, I will then remember the painting that I was doing at that time. Yeah, so I associate like the particular painting with like her first special, Why She's Pregnant, or the second special, Why She's Pregnant.
Y'all should watch, it's great. I was also wondering, so what is the shift between painting to more fiber arts? Like, do you have, like, what's motivating you to make the switch? If you could expand on that a little.
I don't know.
That's a good answer. That's a valid answer.
Okay, well, maybe I'll transition to, I think it is, and it might be something that I know we're going to talk about, and that is, what am I currently working on? And I wanted to be honest with everyone and say that, you know, sometimes it's really easy to get up here and say, you know, like, hey, I just finished this whole series of things, or I just had a show open, or I just had this or that open, and right now, currently, I do not have a huge project that I am working on. And so, when I first came to ESU, I seemed to have a lot of projects that were, that I just kept a-rolling. I had an article that was published in Good Housekeeping, and then that sort of led to a chapter in a book, and then it led to another chapter in a book, and then I had a show that, like a one-woman show that I had, and then I just don't know if the series of paintings that I was working on, if they are finished. And I think that they are finished, and I'm just currently wondering what I'm going to do next. And so I think transitioning to the fiber work is interesting. It's something I haven't done before, and I'm trying to do it to maybe jumpstart something more creative. And trying to look for what it is that I'm going to be working on. And it's interesting to me, and sometimes we do that. We're looking for what's going on and what's going to be that next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great, because I've been kind of thinking about this too, as a person who recently has switched to doing a lot more textile work. I do a lot of quilts these days, and I think a lot about like how fine art and craft seems to be incredibly separate, especially when you read textbooks and things, and I don't agree with that thought, and I would like the idea of challenging that thought. And I think a lot of it has to do with the roots that the things that are labeled as crafts have with what being usually created by people of color or women, so people outside of the margins. So I think it's awesome that you're like dipping your toe there, because I think, you know, that's a huge, I think it's more important than people give it. And I am excited that quilt show just happened, for instance, and that it's just nice. I don't know, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot about this hierarchy of fine arts, especially going to the New York Academy of Art. It's an academy, and painting, and especially oil painting, was definitely, you know, held in such high regard, and very traditionalist sort of view. And I just want to say that, you know, I love the creative aspect, and I think that we need to, you know, just be glorifying any sort of art, you know, so it doesn't matter if we're weaving, or if we're embroidering, or if we're making a cake, or if we're sewing. Like, we are makers, And that is so important. And we need to celebrate all of those things. Yeah, and so basically that hierarchy is bullshit. So we need to say that again and again. Yay!
Yes. So we have purposely left some time for audience questions. Does anyone have any? I'll give you the mic.
Oh,
Or you call people, not me.
okay, right here. Do you need the mic?
Can you project?
I can project.
Okay.
So in class, you talk about self-care. Can you speak about that now?
I can. Self-care is definitely a double-edged sword, especially for teachers and educators. I think it's so difficult that we are putting self-care also on teachers' plates. Because it's like, here, I need you to do all of these things, like do your lesson plans and do all these things and advocate for all of your students, and then also don't forget self-care. Like it's at the very end, like don't forget self-care. And it's so difficult to do all of those things, plus also take care of ourselves. And so, especially like for my pre-service students or my, first year teachers out of the field, like that self-care is going to be so difficult. They're going to have such a hard time, leaving work at work and not, grading every single thing. Sometimes self-care can just be like having good boundaries. And we were talking earlier as we were sort of prepping for this, boundaries, what are those? Sometimes those can be so difficult. And just trying to find that balance when you have time for art and when you have time for your walk and when you have time for your family and when you have time to squeeze in that self-care. All of those things are so difficult, and it is a balancing act. So, I keep trying to mention it, but I keep trying to mention it to myself as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes. Hi.
So you taught elementary art and art for younger individuals. What do you think that art that may be geared towards younger people can do and benefit adults? Like how do you think that can benefit adults?
I think that all art can benefit all people. And sometimes it's just the creative process definitely benefits. Art is a benefit to my life. And sometimes it's that art for art's sake. Like, doesn't art make you feel good when you do it? So, like kids, we don't have to tell them that art feels good when they do it. But sometimes we have to remind adults, like, here's an adult coloring book. It's fun to sit down and relax and color in this coloring book. Like, you could do this, and it's okay for you to do this. Like, we have to remind adults that that's an okay activity for you to do. I think any of those things would be a benefit. It's a stress relieving benefit, it's a fun activity to do, but it's also like a self-esteem builder as well.
Can I say something like
Yes, yeah.
I want to share something on that thought too, is when I was an undergraduate student, my professor talked a lot about having the thing you do that isn't the thing you're always doing, because it's good to break up that, because if you're doing the same thing all the time, like maybe you're doing your main body of work. So he would have like two separate bodies of work, one that was like very serious and one that was like more play, right? And I think what you're saying is important, like play is important because you can really burn yourself out quickly by doing something that can feel too difficult or repetitious or time consuming. So finding the thing that isn't the thing you're always doing is really important, I think.
That's great.
Hi, so outside of the classroom and especially inside the classroom, why do you feel so strongly about being an advocate for others?
Thank you for your question. Being an advocate is my job. That is one of my most important jobs. So, because I am an American, because I am white, because I am able-bodied, it is my job to speak for others that cannot. Like, that is my essential job. That is all of ours essential job. But that's just what we do. We have to speak for those that cannot.
Yeah, if I could piggyback off of that, I know that you have some specialization in advocacy art, is that correct?
In activist art.
Activist art,
Mhm.
my bad. And earlier you were talking about your experiences seeing how sports programs sort of get the attention and the art programs and the band programs seem to kind of wither on the vine.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, you know, those sporting events, they're kind of like this large communal event. Like there's a big game that everybody comes to. And the arts can feel very individualistic and pretty isolating. Is there something you could speak to, considering your passion about activist art, that is a way for us to connect with the community more in the arts?
I think that the arts do connect with the community. You know, like the First Fridays events, like these are connecting with the community. The theater events definitely connect with the community, especially like when we're talking about like high school, for instance, all the theater events bring out lots of people from the community that go to those. Band events bring out lots of people from the community that go to those events. But they don't like to talk about those. They like to talk about how many people from the community go to the football games. And that's why I feel that artists need to be at the table so we can talk about, you know, the community that are coming out and remind people that people are from the community are coming out to these other events as well. That it's not just the sporting events that are happening like at the field house, that people are coming from the community, that they're interested in these events, and also that you know, these events bring out like the full, well-rounded human beings that make a community what they are. Did that answer your question? Yes.
How do you know when a piece is done?
Well, I would like to refer to one of my favorite quotes by Jackson Pollock. How do you know when you're done making love? That's just a funny quote.
That's a rhetorical question.
That's not my official answer. But that is Jackson Pollock's great quote. So every piece of art is a conversation. So like if you're doing a painting, you put down one brush stroke and then you put down another brush stroke. And those strokes, they are having a conversation with each other. So each of those individual pieces of paint, like they are communing with each other, they're talking to each other, and then you're going to add another brush stroke and they are talking to each other. So the painting is going to tell you when it is finished. When the conversation is over, then the painting is done. Jackson Pollock had a better answer. Yes.
Okay. Who would you say are some of your biggest influences?
So my biggest influences, first one is Artemisia Gentileschi. So, fantastic artist. And then for modern artists, there's Susanna Coffey. She is a self-portrait artist that works at the Art Institute of Chicago. She does self-portraits. If you haven't seen her work, you should really look her up. She does little tiny self-portraits. And what I love about her work is that so many self-portraits that we do, they're always very mean looking, you know, because we're concentrating on our faces, you know, like we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're concentrating, and so we always look mean. And she just has an ability of looking delightful in her self-portraits. She always puts on like fun makeup and maybe like a swim cap. She says that like when the UPS guy comes to the house, like never knows how she's going to answer the door. I got to see one of her shows and it was delightful, but I also, I saw her show and then I saw Rembrandt's self-portrait show. And they hung Rembrandt's self-portraits chronologically, so you could see him age as you walked around the room, and that was delightful. I don't think that we as artists do enough self-portraits. So, and then Jenny Saville. Jenny Saville, just amazing flesh and sexy brushstrokes. Yeah. Yes.
What is your favorite museum?
My favorite museum currently is Crystal Bridges. It is in Bentonville, Arkansas. It's fantastic. If you've ever been there, it's a world-class museum, and Rosie the Riveter is there. It's one of my favorite pieces. You should go check it out. You should go on a field trip. Yes. Chewy.
So I come from a really small community, and I was just curious if you had any experience introducing the arts to small communities. If you would have any suggestions on introducing youth into a culture where we can comfortably talk about the arts even within such small towns.
Yeah, so I also come from a very small community, and I think that mural projects are really a great way to get a whole community involved in a small community. And I think that mural projects are a wonderful way to brighten a community and to involve all generations. Have you thought about that? Like, have you?
I mean, we've done several murals around the town, but I've never really seen an active effort from the youth to be included in that, which is kind of a shame.
Maybe, could I ask a question that might help, is what advice do you have for the teachers of those communities to help foster that love of art?
Oh. So, excellent questions. Yeah. I always said that if the people cannot go to the art needs to come to the people. So if it's a small town and you cannot go like on a field trip to go see the art, then the art needs to come to you. So murals is a way to bring art there to the small community. The teachers could also have like some sculptures where they could create some sculptures, or you could do like tape sculpture installations. That might be a fun way. You could do some tie-dyeing in the park. That's another fun activity to try to get some people excited and interested. So other little art installations, do yarn bombing. So that way when people walking by, they're like, what is going on here? Sort of get a conversation started. What's the time?
It is, we are at time.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything else?
Yes, I did. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to say, I wanted to end by saying, I had a few little words. I wanted to say that I wanted you to go out and do fabulous things, but always remember to share all the things that you do with your friends here at Emporia State. We are here and we wanted to celebrate. So once you become an alumni, make sure that you are continuing to share the fabulous things that you do with us, because we're here for you. And I wanted you to go and do epic shit. There you go. Woo!
To support the ESU Art Forum program, please visit emporia.edu/art. Click on the Events tab, scroll down to the Art Forum link and click, then scroll down to the Support Art Forum button and click. Finally, choose your donation level and click on the Continue button to complete the process. We appreciate your support.